Welcome, my name is Michael Wickerson. I'm making these video series for my digital class at Kansas City Art Institute. This is the first one that basically gets students thinking about Rhino 3D. Going into any browser on your computer and typing in, if you're not using the school's computer and want to work at home from your own hardware device, you can go into Rhino 3D downloads, find yourself the link, jump on in, get to the front page, and find that you can get a 3-month license key for Rhino 7 for Mac or Rhino 7 for Windows. Follow some basic instructions. You don't have to worry about the plugins that are accessible to them. It's pretty straightforward to go through. Let's say I actually have Rhino 7 on here. You don't have to worry about the working process. You can go in and try Rhino 7 for Windows if that's your operating system. Rhino 7 is for Mac. Evaluation would be 90 days. And you just kind of follow right through. Unless you want to buy the license, then you can move farther with having the software on your computer for good. I will help you in class when it comes down to that. Without going, what I want to do for the first assignment, and I'm going to walk you through in class, is basic setup for the Rhino and how it actually works fairly well. And I'll just drop out of this one, and we'll jump into opening up Rhino once you have it downloaded on your computer. Just double click the icon with the rhinoceros head, the 6 or 7 that's tucked into it. Just give it a second. There we go. And I've got a bunch of, the only thing different on mine is that if you're the first time opening it up and giving it a second to load, you're going to find that the window comes up with maybe some different colors or defaults or things on it. You'll want to stretch your screen out fully. And if you're on Mac, it's a little different, and I'll have to walk you through that. I want you to go to the theme and the preferences and set it to Windows, so I'll help you with that as well. But once you get it over to a theme, I've talked about this a little bit in class, you want to basically follow these guidelines. Take a look through the first toolbar menu items right here from File and see what's happening there, Edit, View, curves, surfaces, subdivisions, get you thinking about solids, meshes, dimensions. Just have a look at the names. You don't have to go through every one, but just kind of understand why that might be there. The command line that I do recommend, because we're going to move into parametric modeling and computation modeling, is use your command line. Don't have it set so you're just seeing that command as you type it in. Have evidence of seeing a few command lines behind it as to what's been running. You don't have to load up anything. Go to your standard toolbar. The one tool we'll be using on standard toolbar here is I want you to pull out standard, which can be moved around and pulled off to the front, possibly visibility, viewport layout, and the only other things I'll be using maybe in here quite often are seaplanes. And I think the rest will be fine. We won't use too many icons there. Those are quick little references for me to do things like zoom extends all, which I talked about in the first class, visibility, turning things on and off, viewport layout. I like to go back to the 4-part layout. And the seaplanes, sometimes I like changing the orientation of what I'm working on as a seaplane when building geometry. I will recommend that we build from the 0, 0, 0. You'll see a perspective view here that you can rotate around by right-clicking. You can scroll in and out with your middle scroll key, and you can hold down Shift and Pan with your right key back and forth. You can do the same without having to hit Shift, just pan back and forth and up and down on the top view, the front view, and the right view. And you can actually make these windows larger and make other ones smaller. And that's why I keep this viewport layout. I just double click over here and reset everything. If you double click one of these, it's going to make it large. And if you right click on there, it will allow you to move through a bunch of different types of visualizing, from wireframe to shaded to render, ghosted, all the way through to ray traced. And that's kind of popular. Double click on it again, and all of them come back. What's nice is you can set this one to ghosted. You can set the top view to technical. You can set this one to, let's say, artistic, and set this one to pen and ink. And now you've got some nice renders and screenshots that you can grab. If you're ever doing something you just want to share it with me, I'm going to show you here. Just type in, I just start typing in screen capture to file, so SCR, and I can always grab a screen capture, and that's exactly what I ended up doing. Give it a name, and we'll just say test underscore 001, and we'll maybe have reference to that test, KCAI test. And just make sure you're dropping it on something that you can see. And right now it's tucked into another file. I'm going to want to drop that onto my desktop just to start. and you'll get used to directory management as you go. But now I have a picture that I can send you and show me exactly what I'm working on. Say you were working remote and wanted to share some things to me. There's nothing fancy on here. We're not going to any renders. I'm going to go back to Ghosted, and if you choose Ghosted on Windows with the right click, you can just go to the other window and hit right click and right click and right click, and it will default to what you had, except I took that one to, let's go to Ghosted, and then take this one, Ghosted, Ghosted, Ghosted. It's just a fast little tool of right clicking on your mouse to reset your viewports. That's about all you have to really worry about on those, and get in the habit of how you're looking at your objects. If it doesn't make sense, I did talk about squeezing down this side of your panels. You can stretch it out, but I wanted you to notice that these little icons, which relate and can be pulled off, relate very well to these tools up here. So if you're an icon person, you can do select, which will select all. You can select right to left, which will grab everything that touches in that square, and left to right will grab whatever's within that square. And I'll talk about that particular. A good thing to learn about are single points. Drop down a single point. If you right click, it'll redo a command. Location of point, you can always read your command line to know what it wants. Location of point, right click, redoes a command. Location of point, right click, redo a command. So if I jump back to the select tool, you'll see that they're over here in the perspective view. They're all flat in the front and they're all flat in the right. What's nice is you can just kind of select right, edit, and move with the gumball, and that's a little out of our picture here, so I'm just going to roll this up a little bit. I'm going to slam off to the side and reset it so we can actually see everything. And I've got a bunch of snaps going on here, and I have gumball activated. If I take gumball activated, you won't see anything there, but the gumball tool is really wonderful because you can actually move things around by these plane tools. You can move them around by the XYZ arrow markers. You can scale according to that. There's tons of things to do and model with the gumball tool. And I think our first exercise will actually get in doing a lot with that. Smart Track's a nice tool. You don't really need it on, but I will leave it. It's one of my favorites. Object snaps mean everything down here is being activated. And even though this little thing is up and in my way right now, which is a little frustrating, you shrink this. You can ignore this information over here, but basically object snap says that I'm going to snap to ends, nears, points. I'll probably just leave those on as default. I'm pretty happy with those. Planar means whatever you make goes to the plane, the surface construction plane that you're working on. I'm going to leave that off. And ortho, don't worry about it. You can default with a shift key to keep things moving in the X, Y, Z direction. It's quite. Give you a chance to rewatch this video a few times. And grid snap's nice because everything snaps to your grid lines that are actually on here. Don't worry about scale because we can change scale as we export anything as a STL file or OBJ and bring it into Cura for 3D printing. So what I've done here is I've just taken a few of these points, select right to left or left to right to move them up, and I'll just select that point and move that one down. We're basically dealing with points in a three-dimensional area now, and to select them all, come across, you'll see they've all been selected left to right. If I selected them and only hit 3, they'd only be there, and things will get a little more complicated as we go. These points are set up. Lines are very similar to play with polylines. There's many ways. If I took a look at this and said, what is on that? Like, why were there so many? I'll hit exit if I'm ever in a command and nothing's working. I'm just going to pull that out here and have a look at ways to make points. Pull it down here, and you literally can read. And you see single point with the right button. Multiple points can be made with clicking the right button here. You can get extracting points from surfaces, closest point between two objects. It's a wonderful way of thinking of points to make something. And if you bring that off and you don't want to see it anymore, you can just pop it in there. But another thing, when you drag it off, you might want to have that as a tool that if you grab the name points, you can slide it over and pop it in wherever you want. And you've got a nice point tool here after, and you've got access to whatever you want to do. It's popped up along this toolbar if you click that, just like seaplanes. So if you're using something quite a bit, if you're not, take it off and just delete it and it'll go away. We will start with points, which is fairly simple, and there it is. Nothing too tricky. And what I then can do is select them all and probably get in the habit of what I talked about a little bit earlier of having properties, which will tell you what is there. Layers, you can set the default and add a new layer, type in points, and with that, you can select these points, right to left, left to right, right click on here and change object layer, and now you have the ability to visualize those points, lock them so they can be touched or not touched, because now you can't select them, and you'll have the ability to bring them in and out if they become useful for what you're ending up doing. I may use them in a minute, and I'll show you exactly what I was doing. I'm also going to make a couple of blank layers because I know I'm going to do something here with curves and surfaces and solids. And you can always go into one of the sub layers and do a sub layer. And if you don't like the layer that you have on there, you can just delete it. So those are like some simple tools to get into using layers and organizing your information. If I went down and I said, okay, here's the next one for polyline and line segments. Polyline is just more than one line, many lines that come together. So if I click this into a polyline and start drawing, that line will, if planar, stick to the plane. If I didn't do that, and I'll just select it and get rid of it, and I chose to do a polyline perspective view, it really doesn't know where I want that to go. I'm not on planar. So if I rotate, it did default to it, thinking it was there. But at times, objects, when you grab, might actually end up building like this if you're not conscious of that. And then you end up not getting a planar form for your line that's a little harder to do. But you can also grab curves directly from the polyline, the points controlling it, and you can move them around afterwards by selecting those. So I'm just going to go in here and type in, double click and hit polyline, and I might use that geometry. Once it's set, I can select the polyline. And one thing about a polyline, which we'll get to, I might do it in order. I'm going to select that polyline, default to that, hit select one layer, and then make that one disappear. So now we have points, we have polylines. This is a very powerful tool, which is a control point curve, or curves through points. So let's bring back the points, and let's take, right click on here, curve through points, and select points to build curve through, and hit enter, and there you go. You've just made a polyline through those points, and it's adhered to what you're doing. And now we have, within here, we have exactly what we want, which is a curve through points tool. And we could just label this one, let's just do it for interest and type in curves. Make sure you're exiting out of a command line. You can't do anything over here if the command line's activated. That's one thing you want to work on. Mac is a little different, so I will help people through that. So curves, I'm going to leave. I'm going to grab, there's the polyline. There's my curves. Let me do that again. Right click, the curves through these points, and then I'm going to hit enter to accept that, grab that curve and put that to one of my curves. I'm going to change that to that object layer, and I'm going to take that one off. I actually don't think I need those points anymore. The other thing over here, which is quite common, is control point curves. So left click, and take a control, and now you see it's not really adhering. It's going up and down, and it looked like I was drawing perspectively up and down, but that's not what was happening. It was jumping forward and back on the construction plane, and that's where you start to lose ability to control what's going on. So if I hit planar, and I did that again, and I hit the left mouse button and do that again, this will hold the control points that are actually being set but not going through those lines on that surface. And you saw that being generated. Scroll out and you can see what's going on in this direction. Everything's flat here. You can see a little bit of the line that's indicated here and the control points on it. But what's nice with this curve, as you go into it, you have a much more soft way of working that I can select a control point, not a point on the curve, and start to have some real influence. And you'll notice on the top view, this is a wonderful tool for staying planar. Just like over here, I can start to drag that up and stay planar looking across. And you've got to angle your eyes and start thinking about what's happening. I have another curve. I'm going to go to this file and change object layer. And now when I put on, I have two curves that actually pop on. So I'll make those go away. Now things get a little more controlled and organized. If I did something, and I think I'll just jump in here and do something pretty simple, a line that snaps to this point and goes to this point on the top view, stop, right click, and redo it down here. Now what's nice is I can grab this arc tool, and this is a simple right click, and yes, there are many ways of making arcs, but usually the most common way is the one that's right there with the left click. For some reason I like to say right click when I mean to say left. Start in the middle, go to here, and draw that arc around like that, and you've got a nice little chain loop right there. Let's hit redo, start the center of the arc here, go up to the top and draw around like this, and you've got now a pretty nice curve. If we grab that, we can go down here and hit join, and that then becomes something different. 4 curves joined to one closed curve. If you don't believe me, go into what? And that will tell you exactly what you have. A curve, a valid curve, geometry, one segment. Or you can go over here to properties and have a look at what you have, and it's a closed curve, and it's set on default. You can do whatever things you want to change to it in here, but I'd say just leave it as the default. And now we have a much more interesting, I'm going to give another title and say curve geometry. Geometry. And now you're starting to build things, and leave that, grab the curve, pop that on as change current layer, and make that disappear. So you have some geometry that you can actually work and move. Now over here is fairly simple. A rectangle corner to corner, you can start thinking that as top view and having a lot of wonderful grid snap controls. So you're producing a square, right click, produce another rectangle that goes from here all the way up to here. We're starting to build some pretty interesting things. What will we do with those two things? Let's find out later, but let's first grab those two objects and put them on curved geometries as changing object layer, and they disappear as well. So we're just building ourselves things to actually draw and control and create. We're already at 16 minutes, but this is the way to do it, and we've learned about points, curves, and line geometry. Things will get a little complicated in a minute. We'll just take a little break, and I'll put it in another video. Thanks very much for watching, and I think I'll bring back out all the geometries I was playing with, because now I'm getting a little more control and thinking about what I'm building and making. This will start making sense if we start to make a pattern mold for sandcasting, possibly, which we can do analog style today, but we can also try to do it digitally and send something to a 3D printer. Thanks very much for watching.